let's talk about the possibility of appeal here. Obviously, they're going to try it, and there were, they laid out some errors, and there was some question about, I know, a juror in some of this. What do you see here as far as grounds or possibilities that could get some traction for an appeal with Ashley Benefield?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's going to be some pretty decent grounds. Starting with certain rulings that were made about evidence that was not allowed in. Additionally, the stand your ground defense being denied by the judge. I think that there's, without having the full transcripts of the trial, it's hard to know every error, but
Hmm.
because, I mean, when you're talking about appeals, it's got to be errors that were made during the course of pretrial litigation and the trial itself. But there's going to be plenty. And, in terms of what their expert was allowed to testify to and what he was not allowed to testify to, I think will be an issue. Because it's like it's those are the things that could really have swayed a jury because ultimately that's what it boils down to. Like had this particular information been provided to the jury, could that have swayed a jury to reach a different conclusion in terms of innocence or guilt? And I tend to think that especially the expert testimony, which was allowed in part, but not allowed in total. That certainly could have affected a jury. I
Hmm.
mean, you really need to try to explain to jurors if they've never been a victim of abuse or in an abusive type of relationship. It's hard to understand it looking from the outside looking in.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? It's just like until you've experienced it or unless you've experienced it, and in these cases, when you brought up the juror, like that one of the jurors, I think she was a female, but if I remember correctly, she was actually the accused. Like that she had picked up domestic charges. It wasn't that she had domestic charges that she was bringing against a former lover or spouse or something like that. I think that she was the accused. Don't quote me on that
Yeah.
because it's been a hot minute, but I think that that's what was being alleged as to what was going on. And then you obviously had the other juror that was allegedly communicating in real time
Hmm.
that they had reached a verdict or something like that. So, I mean, all those things are going to be brought up. Whether or not any of them are going to be enough to get the appellate court to say, okay, look, you made a mistake not introducing this. And Judge White, I actually like him a lot. I think he's a very good judge. And he's like he said it during sentencing, if you can't take slings and arrows up on this seat, you're not in the right job. You have to be able to accept, that you might get things wrong. And he would say it all the time. He's like, maybe I'm wrong on
Hmm.
this ruling. We'll let the appellate court figure it out. So
Yeah.
we're going to find out. Like some of the issues were articulated and addressed by the judge. He's like, I'm going to rule on it this way, even though I might be wrong, but I'm going to let the appellate court figure it out.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be real fascinating. I think it's a case where you have to understand that two things can exist. You can have someone who has been horribly abused, and you can have someone who also then can be rather dramatic. And I think some people looked at the dramaticism of Ashley Benefield as being a sign of lying or not telling the truth, or hysterics, if you will. But
Histrionics is what they
histrionic, yeah, yeah,
right,
which
yeah.
the two can happen at the same time. You can have been
Yeah, they're not
abused.
mutually exclusive.
Exactly, and then and through your scope, your lens, if you've had a partner who's shot at the ceiling before, who's been abusive, who's punched holes in walls, that volume that maybe they're coming at you at a 2 or a 3 the day of the shooting, but you're perceiving it as a 10 because you've already been through all the abuse before. That's how you gotta understand. It's like a dog that you go to pet that you but it's like pulls away, is afraid they're gonna get hit because that's all that they know.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of that at play here, with Ashley. And maybe some of the claims were exaggerated. I don't know, but in her mind, I think she believed that it was what it was.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I very much think I mean, and she's young, man.
Yeah.
This is she wasn't like a learned woman who's been around the block a bunch of times. I mean, she was really young,
Mhm.
and like I've got three daughters, and you can kind of watch them as they grow older. And I've got a 30-year-old now, and you just like there's only one way to learn about life, and that's by living it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like as parents, we try to tell our kids, give them lessons, and they're kind of like, yeah, whatever, dad.
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
and then some point down the road, they'll harken back to those conversations and be like, Dad, you were right.
Yeah.
But and it wasn't that they took it and digested it and applied it time that we were telling it to them. They had to figure it out on their
Yeah.
own. And it was very much that type of situation for Ashley Benefield. She was immature in a lot of different ways. And she ended up having a kid with this guy. It was a very short relationship, kind of a whirlwind type thing. And then all of a sudden she's stuck in this marriage with this super controlling guy,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
it's like,
And
yeah,
then and do you
it's a sad one.
punish that? I mean, it's it's like, would the 32 or the 42-year-old version of Ashley Benefield make those same choices? I don't know. Probably not. Would most of us make the same choices we made at 22, at 32, or 42? No.
No.
But then obviously someone is dead here as well, and we got to figure out, okay, well, what sort of responsibility should be lying there? It's a lot of moving parts, and probably a lot for a jury to really fully grasp, I think, and that's where a lot of the problem lied for her.
Indeed, indeed, I agree. And those, I mean, ultimately, it boils down to a he said, she said, and for Ashley, there is no he said.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which I think weighs in the favor of the state because he's not there to defend himself. He's not there to get judged by a jury in terms of his credibility. Whereas if this was more like a herd depth thing where you've got both of them taking the stand and you're evaluating who do you find more credible out of the two of them that are saying the opposite things are happening. I mean, this you only have her. And then when they're able to cast her in a certain light, talking about her histrionics and like just the fact that like, oh, she's claiming that he was trying to poison her and that was crazy, all those types of things that they use to kind of cast her in a certain light. And then she testifies on her own behalf, and I thought she was like heartbreaking up there.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, when the prosecutor forced her to, try to recreate the thing and she's just sobbing, and then you're going to have people out there that think she's full of shit.
Hmm.
Oh, look at her. What an actress.
Yeah.
It's like that. That's the thing about humanity. That's the thing about this culture that we live in. It's the thing about the criminal justice system. It's the thing about trials that's also fascinating is that we all have our own perceptions of every single thing. None of us think uniformly with one another. We all have our own opinions and they're all based on our own life experiences. So yeah, it's sad, man. It's a sad case all around.
Hey, thanks for checking out the video. Be sure to follow us wherever you download podcasts, and especially Apple Podcasts, where you can get advanced episode and premium content on our premium channel right there. Also, be sure to follow us on social media so you don't miss any breaking updates on the stories that matter to you most. We're on TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook. Just search Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Bruschi, and you'll find us right there. Again, thanks for watching.